Here's one more example of finding the equation of a line. In this case, we want the equation of the line that passes through the point 4, 9 and is perpendicular to the line defined by this equation. Now, parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines would not. They wouldn't because perpendicular lines cross, so they couldn't possibly have the same slope. But there is a relationship between the two slopes of the lines. It happens that with perpendicular lines, the slopes are opposite reciprocals. When you have perpendicular lines, their slopes are opposite reciprocals. Well, this equation is in slope-intercept form, so we know the slope of the line defined by this equation would be 2/3. So our slope, since our line is perpendicular to it, would be the opposite. Opposite meaning opposite in value. This is a positive value. The opposite of positive value is a negative value. So our slope is going to be negative. And reciprocal. Reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. The product of the slopes always makes -1. When you multiply the slopes of perpendicular lines, you always get a product of -1. Their slopes are opposite reciprocals. So the slope of this line was 2/3, and the reason I knew that it was 2/3 is because the equation's in slope-intercept form, so the coefficient of x is 2/3. Slope of this line is 2/3. If our line is going to be perpendicular to that one, then our slope has to be the opposite of positive, which would be negative. Reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. So now I have my slope m. So I'm going to use that slope m, take the y value of 9, take the x value of 4, and just as we've done before, we can now find the b value. So 9 equals, 2 goes into 4 2 times, so -3 times 2 will be -6. Adding 6 to both sides, I have 15 equals b. So y equals -3/2x plus 15 would be the equation of the line that is perpendicular to the line defined by this equation, and it passes through the point 4, 9. And this is the equation written in slope-intercept form. Let's change this one to standard form with integer coefficients. So standard form, let's put the x term on the left-hand side with the y term. I'll add 3/2x to both sides to do that. X and y terms on one side, constant on the other term. That's what standard form requires. And now let's make integer coefficients. Let's get rid of that fraction. We want integer numbers, whole numbers. So I'm going to multiply the entire equation by 2. 2 times 3/2x will give me 3x, plus 2 times y is 2y, equals 2 times 15 is 30. Here's the equation in slope-intercept form. Here's the equation in standard form. In this case, I used my knowledge of the slopes of perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines, their slopes are opposite reciprocals. So if this equation had a slope of 2/3, this line is a slope of 2/3, my line would have a slope of the opposite of that, which would be negative. Reciprocal of that, 3/2. I used that slope along with my point to find my b, just as we've done before, and we have our equation for this line.